I just kind of wanted to start by letting everybody know a moment of serendipity that Melanie and I got to experience back in October when we were in New York City enjoying the Educators Conference. We were on a tour, a backstage tour, and my tour guide led us down this hallway, and she said, "Hey, you could go in there and you could peek at a rehearsal of Il Trovatore." And we did. We walked down the hallway, we looked in the window, and lo and behold, Melanie walks right past me, literally right past me. I immediately took my phone out and started texting her. She had an iPad. I noticed that none of my texts were dropping down, but the tour guide let me just kind of hold off and wait and see if Melanie might turn around and see me like staring into the back of her head to try and get her attention. She didn't. And so
I
eventually we
was
had to
so
walk
focused.
away. But
I was so focused on
you were so
the
focused,
staging
as
that day.
always. And so she did get my text. We were able to have dinner later that night and catch up. And it happened to be my birthday. And so it was like a birthday present to me to get to see Melanie working so beautifully. It was just a beautiful moment of serendipity.
Oh my gosh. When I got that text, I was like, oh my gosh, wait, what? And I knew that it was funny because I could sense that there were people at the door, but usually oftentimes there are tours going on. So like, that is like why my hyper focus goes in, is because I'm like, no, I have to concentrate and not look at the door, but I could sense it. I knew that you were there.
So cool. It was amazing. Yeah, so Melanie and I, we met many, many years ago. I brought a photo. I got permission to share it. This is from about 2005. We're wearing, you can't tell, but we're wearing our Wicked popular t-shirts in that picture.
The
We go way
OG
back.
t-shirts. Yes, yeah. So, just a little bit further background for context. So, Melissa was my very first director ever that I worked with in my life. So I think it's kind of serendipitous that we're getting to have this moment because now I myself am directing, and she directed me in Fiddler on the Roof Junior when I was in fifth grade, and then The Little Prince when I was in sixth grade. And then when I was in fourth grade, she actually gave me my very first solo because I have background in singing. That was the very first time I ever did any solo singing. And I was definitely a shy child. So the fact that she gave me the courage to even audition for the solo and then to get the solo and do the solo, she created a monster basically after that. So now that I would say that that is the foundation of my training that has taken me all over the place. So
I
I'm
told
very grateful.
Melanie, I told Melanie the other day that there's no way she could remember this, right? Because she was in fourth grade. But I was just walking up and down the aisles of students singing, and I heard her voice, and it stopped me. And I turned to her and I just whispered, "You should consider auditioning for a solo." And so I got to tell her that story the other day. There's no way she could have remembered that from her
And I
childhood.
definitely
But I
didn't. But I
did.
do remember never having done anything like that before, ever. And that being definitely a pivotal moment in my life. So I will eternally be grateful.
Oh my goodness. Me too. Me too. Um, so Melanie, could you tell us a little bit more about your role at the Met?
Yes. So I am on the stage directing staff. There is a rotation of us, about maybe 20 to 30 directors who are on staff throughout the season at the Met. And we all kind of take different roles in all of the productions that happen throughout the season. I have been primarily assistant directing, but there's assistant directors, there's revival directors, and there's associate directors. And so what happens is that on a new production, typically the stage man or the assistant directors will function very much like stage managers in the room, because typically we don't have stage management until we get to stage. So it's very stage managerial in terms of the functions. There's a lot of paperwork involved, a lot of communication, basically keeping documents that track the shows, that help communicate with the other departments so that everybody knows how the shows happen. And so that is primarily the role of assistant director in the room. And then once we get into reviving shows that already exist, so these are, remounting, for example, the Zeffirelli Bohème that happens all the time, there will typically be one of our staff who's the revival director who will direct the show to the original staging, and then people that assist them. And so it is a whole team of us directors who just kind of run around making everything happen throughout the season. And it's definitely a wonderful and wild role to have.
That is wonderful. Just to back up a little bit, we talked about where you were at, in third, fourth, fifth, and sixth grade. Tell us a little bit more about what happened after that, maybe after you graduated from high school, so that we understand your path and where all of this amazing came from.
Yeah, so it's my journey has been a bit non-traditional and a bit wild in that I got my undergraduate degrees. I have a bachelor's of music and voice performance and a bachelor of science in psychology because I was interested in both things at the time from the University of Evansville. And then I decided to study abroad in right before my senior year. With Salzburg College in Austria in conjunction with the Mozarteum University. So I got a little certificate when I was there. And that's what really drew me towards opera, was that experience of seeing many operas live for the first time, really diving into Mozart especially. I was really, really drawn to him in De Ponte's Libretti. And then being able to go to grad school, I got my master's in vocal pedagogy and performance. And while I was there, I started working very closely with one of the directing staff faculty, and very much fell, and it feels like I fell into opportunities that were really guiding my passion to storytelling. And I've realized that I've always been a storyteller at heart. And one thing led to another, and I started taking production gigs. I was doing a lot of stage management for a little bit, but then it led me to doing more assistant directing and now directing. Word of mouth got around that I was interesting to work with. And so I ended up meeting my boss, Paula Swazi, over the pandemic via Zoom. And gratefully, I got in the season after that. So yeah, it was kind of a weird and wild ride to get here.
Absolutely. I had the pleasure of getting to watch Melanie stage manage in Aspen. Do you remember when I popped up to
Yes, I do
Aspen
remember
and
that.
I saw a
Yeah.
production of yours there? And so it's fun that I got to see like what happened just before all of this.
Yes.
It's
Yeah. And I was
amazing.
still at that time still discovering what exactly I enjoyed about being a part of opera production. And I think it took me a while to really be able to say out loud that I want to direct, because I wasn't really seeing myself represented in the directors that I was working with. And I think it took a little bit of my own self-discovery to say, like, well, they might not look like me or create like me, but I can still create too, and that my voice is valuable and matters. So I've been very grateful for the support of a lot of incredible mentors who have helped push me there.
That's wonderful. So could you tell us, you have a lot of experience assistant directing in remounts. Could you tell us
Mhm.
the difference between a remount and assistant directing in a new production?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So in a remount, the interesting part of that is that all of it has already been created. So it almost feels like you're sort of copy and pasting what had been done before with new artists. And it's a little bit of a different challenge, because then you're having to, especially if it's a work that you didn't initially work on with the original director, making sure that you fully understand the director's vision, their impetus for everything, and being able to communicate that adequately to the artists so that it can feel fresh and that it can feel real and alive. Whereas in a new production, you're getting to be there, creating it all happening at once, and discovering what works and what doesn't work, and trying on different things. And so the preparation process is quite different, because when it's a remount, you have all the information at hand, and so you're basically like learning how to memorize the story in order to tell it in the way that it's supposed to be told for that production, to the artists and the technicians involved. And then for a new production, there's not a whole lot of prep process besides just trying to decide what you want to create, and then being in the room and being really present and being willing to try on different things and help make that happen. And so especially at the Met, where there's a lot of remounts happening, the role of the director is really crucial in really getting it all together, because there's often not a lot of time to put it together, despite, yes, usually, with the Met Chorus being the amazing group of people that they are, and the dancers and the children, oftentimes we will have returning members of those productions in those roles. So it'll just kind of be everybody's muscle memory. But then, you have principals coming in who've never done the production. And so it's a bit of a puzzle piece trying to get all of those parts working together and up to speed in the same time, which is also very limited time, because we have so many things going on in the building that it can often feel like you're off to the races a little bit, and so we might have 1, 2, 3 days to on stage before we open, and that could be inclusive of orchestra time, which is also its own beast, and so it's a lot of organization regardless of new production or remount, but definitely for a remount it has to be really, really organized, because you don't really have a lot of time to make it happen. And so the role of the stage director not only puts the story up, but also helps manage the story and its time to get onto the stage.
And that's a huge gift of yours. I see that all the time on social media, all of your colleagues commenting on your spreadsheets and how organized you are. So you bring that incredible gift to the Met. And then a new production.
Yeah, yeah. And so for new production, a lot of it is really working with the directing and the design team to make sure that their vision and everything that they want to create gets executed. And especially at the Met, where we have the luxury of having casts that are hundreds of people. You'll see for Aida, for example, in that Act Two Triumphal March that you were just listening to, I think we calculated in that whole scene, there's more than 200 people on stage, banda, chorus, dancers, children, principals, everybody. It's an army of people. And so with that, that's a lot of people to wrangle. And so oftentimes, the director will say, okay, well, I want to have maybe a group of people here and a group of people here and then a group of people here. It's very much dividing and conquering. And so me and my colleagues will say, like, okay, I'll go talk to these actors, you go talk to those actors, you go talk to the chorus, and you go talk to the kids. And so then we're all like running around and making that happen. And so it's a lot of trial and error in doing that, but very much a collaborative environment within that, and a lot of just making it happen as we go, which when it's a new production and we haven't ever created it before, you just got to try something and put them on stage and do it. At the Met, something else that we do is we have, for new productions, typically a pre-tech rehearsal period in which we tech the whole show with all of its elements on stage without the artists. So we get to do lighting and any automation that happens, and test out fire. For example, you'll see fire in Aida in Acts 3 and 4 and Act 1. And so being able to test out all of those technical elements prior to even being in the room rehearsing it. And there's a lot of coordination with that the directing team does as well.
That just sounds fascinating to me. And it's wonderful to hear you tell me all about this, because I know how much you loved tech theater as well, even from
Totally.
the time you were in sixth grade. So this is
Absolutely.
wonderful. So what would you like us to know about Aida?
Oh man, this production is really incredible. And I feel very lucky in that my very first season at the Met, which was the 22-23 season, that was actually the last time that the old production was done. So I feel like I have a nice glimpse of Aida's history at the Met. And how grand that was, and that primed me for how grand this one is as well, because of just the sheer number of people, as I was saying before. And so this particular production, what you can expect is to see a lot of colors, a lot of really vibrancy, more than the old production had, if we're making a comparison. But something that is completely new is this framing concept that Michael Mayer, the director, introduced, in which we are introduced to these archaeologists. He based these characters off of Argus Mariette, who did this excavation during the 19th century and was an Egyptologist, and actually was the inspiration for a lot of Verdi's initial design ideas, and I think designed the costumes and the set for the first production. There's plenty of interviews that Michael Mayer has done where he talks about this and his inspiration for it. But so you will see the very first opening sequence is with an archaeologist present, and they make their way in and out of the scenes as a transition point. And the whole concept is thinking about, how do we frame this story in a way of the archaeologist finding the story and bringing it to life in a way, but also sort of a look at how we can look at this story as, who is able to tell this story, the colonization that has happened within storytelling in terms of appropriation and things like that within different cultures and cultural implications. And so Michael leaves it very much out to you as an audience member to take away what you want from this framing, but you do get to see these archaeologists who kind of look like Indiana Jones coming through different scenes. And then in the Act 2 triumphal scene, you'll notice that they end up taking things from the tomb instead of it being a triumphal march. And so just keep in mind that anytime that you see them, they're supposed to be in a different time period than the Aida story that is taking place. It's sort of like any time that we go back and forth a little bit whenever we see them. So that is something that you probably have never seen in an Aida production before.
Right.
That will be very different to experience.
And an important detail to share with your students so that they have a little bit of understanding of that before they get to see it.
Be like, who's the Indiana Jones coming in?
Okay, so we got to meet Quinn back in October. So I know that a lot of my colleagues would be interested to know what it's like working with Quinn and Angel Blue and the cat.
Oh my gosh, they're so wonderful. I absolutely adore Quinn, who's also a Chicagoan, actually, which was something that we were able to bond over. And Angel Blue is just absolutely, like, truly, literally an angel. I've now gotten to work with her on a couple of pieces. Last season, I was working on the new Carmen that she was singing, Micaela, and she just has so much grace for her colleagues, so much poise in the room, just such a warm and inviting energy that it really provides the sense of calm with her and her colleagues. That she's a really beautiful collaborator in that way, and she's always really game to work with the directors that she's with. She's incredibly smart. And just a really, like, honestly, the ideal type of artist to work with. I've absolutely enjoyed my time with her, and I very much adore her as a human being.
That is wonderful. And working with a cast of that size?
Bananas, but in the best way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Probably the biggest challenge for that is just memorizing everyone's names, and really making sure that I mean, one of the first things that my team did was we made face pages where it's little headshots of all 125 actors that are in it with their names, because not only do we have to say hello to them all the time, but we have to write down where they're standing and what they're doing, and being able to track all of that. So that is probably one of the biggest challenges, is just like keeping track of all the people. But what makes it easier is that everybody is such a great energy and is so excited to be doing it. And really just the talent and the dedication, we couldn't ask for a better group of people.
That's awesome. Melanie, you are always in 3 or 4 places at a time. That's why I didn't even think to text you to tell you I was going to be in New York, because I'm like, she could be anywhere. Where all are you right now? You have your directorial debut coming up.
Yeah.
So tell us all the places that you are right now and what you're doing, what projects you have your hand in.
Yeah, so I am actually right now, I am in the middle of Indiana. I'm in Bloomington, Indiana, at Indiana University. Apologies for the low lighting. That we don't have much lighting in the lobby right now, but I'm working on the very, very, very early stages of a workshop co-commission with the Met, which has been something that they have been doing for a few shows now, and it's a really exciting process to be a part of in the early developments of a brand new opera. So I'm here this week helping with that. And then I'll be back next week for the last two performances of this cast of Aida. And then I head off to Chicago to make my directing debut for a new production of La Boheme, which I'm super excited about. And then I will head to Pittsburgh after that to be the associate director for a Madame Butterfly production that I've worked on before with Matthew Ozawa. So, and then this summer I will be in Santa Fe as the Santa Fe Opera house assistant director. So if you find yourself at any of those places, come say hi. It's all these places are wonderful, wonderful opera companies and really great places to visit. So highly recommend.
And I'm thrilled because I get to fly in for opening night of La Boheme,
So
flying into
excited.
Chicago.
We're
It's
so
going to be
special.
incredible. So special. Well, I noticed on your website that Anne Bogart mentioned that you are a force. And I just want to wrap this up by saying she always has been. She is an unbelievable human. I remember telling my son the fact that I don't think I have ever heard Melanie complain. Never. I mean, you are just a beautiful person inside and out. I am so very proud of you and so thankful that Nick asked us to do this evening. So thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the way that you are serving the Met and all of us. And yes, thanks for being
Oh
here
my
tonight
gosh.
with me.
The compliments right back. You helped create this in me, and I will forever be grateful, and just the light that you show. And I'm so glad that you're a part of this community now.
Oh, it's so
And
exciting. I
yes,
love
and
it.
thank you so much, Nick, for letting us share our story.
Yes, thank you, Nick.